Hi friends, today we are going to learn how to float to the very top of your mat. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons. That would be deeply appreciated. And feel free to drop a comment below. Before we get started in this practice, please ensure that your body is warmed up, particularly your wrists, your shoulders, your hip flexors, and your glutes, and as well as your lats. Floating to the top of the mat is a journey, meaning that you won't see results right away, but with intentional practice on a day-to-day basis, as well as daily self-care, because the wrists are pretty vulnerable joints, and we want to make sure that we build our way up into the float. And the float is aesthetically beautiful, it's graceful, it looks very elegant, but again, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort to get that floaty feeling. We'll walk through the process as to what to build up to it because there are a lot of components that go into floating. For instance, compression, hip flexor strength, hamstring mobility, shoulder strength, and the willingness to be able to fall and get right back up again. And I know that sensation of jumping forward may be a little scary because sometimes we all fear of falling over. But eventually, with time and that intentional practice, you'll no longer feel that fear. Stick around for the very end because I will be sharing a very, very, very useful neuro hack to access greater mobility into your forward fold and into compression. If you haven't done my floating drills yet, please go ahead and check out the description for the link to that specific class. We are going to get started today in downward facing dog. So step your feet towards the back of the mat, and you want to make sure that your shoulders are elevating towards your ears. Keep a bend in your legs. I know that a lot of times we're cued to do downward facing dog with our heels flat on the earth like this. But you'll see that creating this active stance and creating this active compression between the thighs to the midsection of your body is going to prepare you for that active stance as you float. Because if our heels are pressed down like this and we look to the top of the mat, then we bend the legs, it's going to be very hard to gain that power and control to get our hips over the shoulders and over the wrists. So always take this active stance in your downward facing dog, bend the legs, and send your hips, think hinging from the hips up towards the sky. Look forward in the space between your wrists. This is very important because if you look too far ahead, what will happen is that you lose the integrity of that stacked position for compression. You'll always end up falling over, and that's why it's best to always keep your eyes in between your wrists or in between your thumbs. This is also very helpful if you're learning how to handstand. So from this active downward facing dog, keep your gaze in the space between your wrists or thumbs. Take an inhale to lift the heels, bend the legs, look forward. On the bottom of your exhale, float, and just notice how that feels. Then step back. And as you float, you want to float so that your hips are over your shoulders while keeping the shoulders in one place. You're essentially fighting for your shoulders to stay at the same place, even though it will shift a little forward. Keep working on that shoulder mobility. So we'll do that again. Inhale to lift the heels, bend the legs. Bottom of the exhale, activate your feet by pointing through the feet, push the ground away, and float. We'll do that one more time. Inhale to lift the heels, bend the legs. Bottom of the exhale, step or float, activate the legs, activate the glutes, push the ground away. You're at the very top of the mat. So why are we learning how to float to the top of the mat with our legs landing outside of the hands? Well, because floating takes a long time to build up. And if we begin by learning from a really tight space, so for example, moving through a traditional Surya Namaskar A, Sun Salutation A, Usually, we inhale to lift the heels, bend the legs, bottom of the exhale, separate float feet in between the wrists. Now, that's a really tight position to be in, and a lot of us lack that hamstring mobility to get to that spot. And what happens that I've seen in many people learning how to float to the very top of the mat is that they end up injuring their traps. So the traps are right here, and the traps connect to your neck. And it's not a good feeling when you feel injury in that area. And a good way to prevent that injury from taking place is to really not push yourself and to decompress your spine by hanging off a pull-up bar, hanging up on a jungle gym, or any kind of bar that's elevated up, so that we want to avoid that injury that typically comes when we learn a new skill. So we're going to do that one more time. Find your active downward facing dog. Push the ground away with your arms. Inhale to lift the heels, bend the legs. Bottom of the exhale, activate your feet. Float to the top of the mat. One really important drill that I've learned in my study of neuroscience is this drill called the thumb push-up. You could also use this with a pen. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to take our thumb. You could do this sitting down or standing up. Take your thumb just in front of you. And in order to test out this drill, first, you're going to fold over your legs in a forward fold. And notice how this feels, because we're going to come back and revisit this position after that drill. So the forward fold is really important for building up your press handstands, for building up that float, that journey to the top of the mat, because it is this active compression that is working there. And oftentimes it's the most overlooked element of building your journey to float or the quest for the press. So take your thumb in front of you. What we're going to do is bring this thumb to the tip of your nose. You're going to let your eyes converge towards the tip of your nose, gazing at the thumb. Don't worry if you look silly, but basically, bring the thumb towards your nose, the very tip, and just let your eyes converge down, turning inwards towards the thumb. As you close your eyes, maintain that gaze fixation towards the tip of your nose and the thumb. On your next breath in, bring the thumb in front of you, moving it away from your nose. Open your eyes. This time we're going to bring the thumb towards the direction of our eyebrows or the very, very top of the nose. So take an inhale here. Then bring the thumb closer, converge upwards. Keep looking at your thumb. And don't worry if you look silly. Close your eyes. Maintain that gaze fixation of the eyes looking upwards toward the thumb. And then slowly move the thumb away from your face. Blink the eyes open. For this final round, we'll take the thumb towards the tip of the nose once again, but this time I want you to stick your tongue to the roof of your mouth and hum as you do so, as you bring that thumb closer to the tip of your nose. Close your eyes, maintain that gaze fixation. And then move the thumb away from your face. Lower your right arm down, blink the eyes open. Now we're going to revisit that forward fold once again. So inhale to reach your arms up towards the sky. Exhale, hinge from the hips, fold. Maybe you notice a greater range of motion in your forward fold. Maybe it feels nicer. And we're going to meet in a downward facing dog next and test how that float feels after doing that neuro drill. Why that neuro drill is important is because it activates your flexor tone. So that shoulder flexion and your extensor tone, which is going to affect your wrists. So meet in downward facing dog. Take an inhale, push the ground away. Even as you jump into the top of the mat, you're pushing the ground away with your arms and with your shoulders. So keep your gaze in the space between your wrists and your thumbs. Active legs. Push your hips up towards the sky. Stay really strong and powerful in your downward facing dog. Inhale to lift the heels. Bend the legs. Bottom of the exhale, float your feet to the outside of your hands. We'll do that one last time. Beautiful work. And notice how different that feels after that neuro drill. Grip the ground with your fingertips. Stay active in the arms. Stay active in the shoulders. Inhale to lift the heels. Bend the legs. Bottom of the exhale, step or float. Feet to the outside of your hands. Awesome work, everybody. When I first learned how to float, I was pretty shocked at how floppy my leap to the top of the mat was. But again, with a lot of time and a lot of patience and just letting my body adapt to the stresses that we place on it when we learn these new skills, these new techniques, taught me a lot in my journey. And at the end of the day, ultimately, your greatest teacher is yourself and your unique experience in your own body. So please just go at your own pace. Take videos of yourself as you float. And even though it might look silly to you, it's important to be able to track your progress and to celebrate those little wins. Because if we don't celebrate those little wins, we'll have a dopamine depletion event and feel really burnt out. What's really important is to be honest and not be critical of yourself in the journey and just have fun, laugh at yourself. Because when I started out, trust me, I was definitely not the most graceful floater, to put it that way. But have fun. If you have any more questions, please drop a comment below. And please check out my compression drills as well as my hip flexor strengthening drills in the link in the description box below. Because to be able to incorporate those drills as you practice that float to the very top of the mat is going to translate into other areas of your practice, such as your handstands, any kind of movement that involves active compression. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I wish you grace in your journey. Thank you for practicing with me wherever in the world you may be. I appreciate you.